Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the Department of Financial Protection and Innovation's annual Financial Capability Month webinar and virtual resource fair. My name is Katie Carrasco, and I'm the Northern California Targeted Outreach Specialist. A couple of parameters first before we get started. Everyone will be muted during today's presentation, but if you have general questions for the DFPI, please feel free to add them to the chat or email any of the presenters directly, or you can send an email to outreach@dfpi.ca.gov, and we'll put that in the chat for you. And we'll make sure that it gets to the right place. You can also access a recording of this presentation on our YouTube channel, and we'll put that in the chat as well. And I want to remind you that all of our resources for this initiative are on our website, and we have a fantastic group of presenters and partners. So please go visit their virtual resource fairs or resource booths after the webinar, and we'll add that to the chat as well. So feel free to click there. Slide. We have an excellent group of people and organizations contributing to this day or today's event, including the FDIC, Social Security Administration, State Controller's Office of Unclaimed Property, CalSavers of the State Treasurer's Office. And then we're going to mix things up a little bit and invite our Deputy Commissioner of the Office of Financial Technology Innovation, Christina Tetreault, who will be moderating a panel of a discussion on cyber fraud, and with representatives from the FBI, Consumer Action, and AARP. I'll let Christina introduce her guests when we get to that point. Slide, please. As you know, the DFPI is California's financial services regulator, licensing and overseeing hundreds of thousands of financial professionals and products. Please visit our website for more information, and that's dfpi.ca.gov. Also, make sure to stay up to date with the DFPI by subscribing to our newsletter, The Consumer Connection. We'll add that to the chat as well. This event, in recognition of the National Financial Capability, formerly known as Financial Literacy Month, was historically held in person in both Sacramento and Los Angeles. We've adapted and moved online like everything else over the last couple of years. This webinar and virtual resource fair aims to help spread awareness and enhance education around the very significant topics of financial empowerment and financial fraud prevention, both important parts of DFPI's mission. All right, so let's jump right in. First up, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Community Affairs Specialist with the FDIC, Spike Kale. Take it away,
Thank you,
Spike.
Katie.
Sure.
Good morning, everyone. Next slide, Coop, since Katie gave me a wonderful introduction. So my name is Spike Kale. I'm with the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. We as an agency, our primary role is being one of the primary bank regulatory agencies. We also provide deposit insurance to all deposit insured accounts across the nation. And our role in financial education and financial capability is that, we create and distribute financial education and capability resources, materials, curriculum. We also train the trainers. We provide technical assistance to organizations looking to develop or create new programs or initiatives. And we try to highlight really promising best practices and other innovative ways that these tools are being applied in the field. Next slide, please. So to give us a bit of a grounding around, what is financial capability? Why is financial capability important? I thought it would be good to sort of set a sort of an academic definition. So financial capability is the capacity based on knowledge, skills, and access to high quality financial products to manage financial resources effectively. So it kind of talks about sort of the intersection of knowledge, but also sort of the products and utilization for, most prosperous outcomes for those individuals. Sort of the why here is improving financial capability can help to promote financial inclusion, increase savings levels, stimulate economic activity, reduce the incidence of over-indebtedness, and help to remove more people who are poor out of poverty. In addition, increased financial education and capability can help consumers improve awareness to avoid becoming victims of fraud, scams that may lead to financial losses, credit impacts, and other unwanted outcomes, which I know is going to be a feature of the conversation today. Next slide, please. So I'd like to talk about one of our actually most recently created and distributed products, which is called How Money Smart Are You? It's the latest addition to our kind of broad array of Money Smart products that we have. It was launched on September 30th, 2021. It's a completely online, self-paced, direct-to-consumer kind of set of financial education games and resources. It's available in both English and Spanish. Next slide, please. I think the reason why we created the product that you may wonder is, the primary focus is gamification. People want to be entertained when they learn. They want to be able to relate to topics and situations in that kind of training environment. They don't want the passive learning of sort of yesteryear of how people approach this. The games require people to be involved. They can play mini games, and it helps individuals kind of understand kind of the landscape and what's going on. It's also modular, so an individual can use what they want and really ignore the rest. It has universal accessibility. It's created using plain language. It's been tested with individuals with disabilities. It's also 508 compliant, which is with part of the Rehabilitation Act, and there's closed captioning available, so it has broad accessibility. Next slide, please. So, there are 14 topics covered. Each of these is not a game. These are just really the array of different topics that are focused within How Money Smart Are You? And some of you may be familiar with this if you, were engaged in our, Money Smart for Adults, Financial Education Curriculum, or Money Smart for Youth. Those are still really kind of front and center as the primary areas that they're going to be focusing energy and attention on regarding financial literacy topics. Next slide, please. Each game that the individual will go into has a round, and there's an introduction to the game. There's a rounds menu that will be shown. This is sort of a slide of what that might look like. This one is for savings. Has 5 rounds. Others might have 2, 3, or 4. Kind of just depends on which game you choose. Play only the ones that you're interested in. But if an individual wants to get sort of a certificate of completion, they have to go through all rounds of that particular game. There's a lot of nuances within these games about getting coins and kind of accruing sort of outcomes and growth within the game. But if you win the game, you can earn a certificate if you log in as like a logged in user. But an individual doesn't have to be a logged in user. This is meant to have really broad accessibility and use. So we want people to be able to access it in the way that they feel most comfortable. Next slide, please. And so far, we've just kind of been talking about the games that are going on and gamification, which is really an important element of this. But more than games, there are resources. There are key takeaways, there are tools, there are FAQs, there are helpful links to help people navigate deeper or more thoroughly the specific topics that are being talked about. There's also just sort of a composite glossary and kind of a central resource across all the games to help, again, using plain language, using kind of real clear accessibility in terms to help people become comfortable and confident in understanding and really garnering, meaningful learned outcomes as part of the gamification and playing this platform. Next slide, please. So in addition to individuals that can access this platform, it's also can be a valuable tool for organizations. Organizations themselves can have organization accounts. It's a great way for organizations that want to help their customers or their clients or their students kind of have a new or a unique interactive way to be engaged and help, engage around financial education and capability education. Players who are doing this can link their individual accounts to the organization account. The organization can log into the account to look at reports of individuals who've played the games and how they've done, and if they have certificates and things of that nature, they'll be able to, kind of view, save, and print those certificates of completion. And that's a good proxy for a lot of organizations seeking sort of measurable outcomes, determining steps individual have gone and potentially like an asset building or financial capability program that's being used. Next slide, please. In addition to our How Money Smart Are You program, we still have a wide array of different products and services that are available. Our existing curricula for Money Smart for young people, young adults, older adults, Money Smart for small businesses, We have our self-paced products such as How Money Smarter You, as well as sort of a podcast and sort of listening sessions. They come with instructor guides, participant guides, a lot of useful tools and information for individuals, for organizations, for collaborative groups that are seeking to identify financial education, financial capability kind of platforms and tools and processes to help support their clients and their broader communities. Next slide, please. Lastly, I'll just point to a couple resources that the FDIC has. During the pandemic, we started a #GetBanked webpage, which is really focused on economic inclusion and decreasing the number and percentage of unbanked individuals there are, and helping them identify accounts that are tailored to un- and underbanked populations. We also have data around the unbanked from the FDIC's survey of How America Banks. Another version of that survey will be coming out later this year, I believe around October. And lastly, for those focused on the Community Reinvestment Act, or CRA, we have information and resources on Q&As that help individuals better understand the intersection of these products, platforms, and programs, and CRA partnership opportunities, either with banks or from banks to community organizations. Next slide, please. With that, just want to say thank you for the time. Thank you for the DFPI for the time today. And good luck with the rest of the program. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Spike. Now I'd like to introduce Senior Special Assistant Nicole Jones from the California State Controller's Office to talk about unclaimed property.
Good morning, everyone. Today I'm here to share some information from the Office of State Controller Betty Yee. I am part of her public affairs team. I'm down in Southern California today, so it's great to be on this statewide platform. The controller has enjoyed participating every year in this event. Today, I want to start off my presentation by sharing about unclaimed property, and then I will share some more information about various financial fitness and consumer protection resources from our office. Unclaimed property, let's start off there. Hopefully you've heard this before, but if you've not, since 1959, state law, the California's unclaimed property law, has required banks, insurance companies, corporations, and certain other entities to report and submit property of their customers when there's been no activity, which has been generally for about 3 years. Common types of unclaimed property are bank accounts, stocks, bonds, uncashed checks, insurance benefits, wages, and safe deposit contents. Property does not include real estate. Controller Yee safeguards this lost or forgotten property and seeks to reunite it with the rightful owners. SEO will never charge a fee, and while there are investigators that will submit claims on behalf of individuals for a fee, please watch the next video, so next slide, to see how you can claim your unclaimed property yourself.
Welcome to the California State Controller's tutorial on searching for unclaimed property on claimit.ca.gov. As you search for property that may belong to you, here are some helpful tips. Provide your basic information when you first begin your search. A good example is not using a middle initial. If your name is John P. Sullivan and a business reports property for John Sullivan, any property search that includes a middle initial will not appear in the search results. At the same time, keep in mind that the system requires a minimum of 3 characters in the name field to produce any results. In this example, a search for John P. Sullivan results in 70 property records. If you remove the middle initial, the search results now show more than 500 matches. From there, you can narrow the results by adding cities you lived in or where you received mail. When financial institutions, insurance companies, and other businesses report unclaimed property, the State Controller's Office is required to list the exact information provided by the business, even if a name, street address, city, or zip code is incorrect. Sometimes these mistakes are the reason a payment was not delivered to you in the first place, and why the property ended up being sent to the State Controller's Office for safekeeping. When narrowing the search by city, you can enter partial information. For example, if you lived in Gold River, you can just enter Gold for the city. Also, try common misspellings of your name. You do not need to enter your full name, and you can extend your search to nicknames. For example, if your name is William and you go by Will, you can just enter the letters W-I-L-L in the name field. Once you have search results to view, look for any address where you have lived, received mail like a P.O. box, or have a family member. Once you have found an item that belongs to you, you will see an Add button before the property ID number. You can start the claim process by clicking on that button. This will add the property to your shopping cart that will be visible on the upper right-hand corner of the screen. Click on the Claim Properties in My Cart button to navigate to the Claims Cart page. Once you are on the Claims Cart page, you can perform additional searches by clicking on the Continue Search button. You may even be eligible to use eClaim, which is the fastest way to claim your property. However, not all properties can be claimed online. In some cases, you may need to print the claim form and mail it to the State Controller's office with additional documentation. Be sure to thoroughly read the instructions. If you would like more information about a listing you find on our website, write down the property ID number and provide that to our team when you call the State Controller's office at 800-992-4647. Our call center is open 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Monday through Friday, except state holidays. Finally, if you locate an item but do not wish to immediately submit a claim, there is nothing to worry about. There is no time limit to submit your claim, and the property will be held indefinitely for you or your heirs. The California State Controller's team is committed to helping rightful owners find and receive their property. Thank you for checking in with us.
So again, that phone number is area code 800-992-4647 for the Unclaimed Property Division. And you can also do your search at the website that's listed on the screen, claimit.ca.gov. That will be a shortcut to take you to the State Controller's website, and you will see the same screens you saw in the video. Just want to remind everyone to double check, and you can check often because it depends upon the cycle by which people are turning property over to the State Controller's office. California is holding more than $8 billion in unclaimed property. And as I did a quick search on individuals on today's program, I would encourage Michael San, Nelson Santiago, and Kathy Stokes to check because your name did appear as having some unclaimed property with the state of California. Secondly, on this page, you'll see information to the Controller's Financial Fitness and Consumer Protection site. You will see that there are different blocks there. You click on them and there's information on different resources for the various stages of life, including preparing for retirement, small business ownership, looking for a home, and understanding taxes. So please check our website at sco.ca.gov. And one last item to share about is the Property Tax Postponement Program. That is a program that allows homeowners who are seniors, who are blind, or have a disability to defer their current year property taxes on their principal residence. Typically, the deadline for this year would have been February the 10th, 2022, but 23 counties that were hit by severe storms or wildfires have extensions through May 11th, 2022. So please go to our website again, www.sco.ca.gov, to get more information if you want to learn more about the Property Tax Postponement Program. And below on this slide, if you have any phone or the other questions, you can call by phone also to the executive office at 916-445-2636. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Nicole. I definitely need to do that. Next up, we'll hear from Outreach Specialist Carolina Hernandez on the fantastic state program CalSavers, headed by the State Treasurer's Office. Thank you for joining us, Carolina.
Thank you very much, Kay. Good morning, everybody. I'm Carolina Hernandez. I'm the Outreach Coordinator for the CalSavers program. CalSavers is California's retirement savings program. It was created for private sector employees who do not have a way to save for retirement at their workplace. Next slide, please. I'd like to start off by talking about some of the financial landscape of California. Currently, nearly half of Californians are projected to retire into economic hardship, unless if we can retire at all. We believe that a key component to this fact is that there's about 7.5 million Californians who currently do not have a way to save for retirement at their workplace. And we think that that is really important because we know that people are 15 times more likely to be saving and be on a path towards retirement security when they have access to a payroll deduction retirement program at their workplace. That probability increases to 20 times more likely when that program features automatic enrollment. Next slide, please. So with that in mind, the legislature back in 2016 created a new employer mandate. And that mandate requires California businesses who do not offer an employer-sponsored retirement plan, who average 5 California employees or more in a calendar year, and who at least one of those employees is eligible to participate, register in CalSavers, and facilitate their employees' access. For their employee eligibility, we are looking at employees with California W-2 wages who are 18 years or older and have either a Social Security or an ITIN. We also like to mention that CalSavers is not intended to replace or compete with any existing employer-sponsored plans. Our goal here is really just to increase participation in the overall market, not just in CalSavers. Next slide, please. So CalSavers officially launched back in 2019, and any eligible business can register at any time, but must do so by their designated deadlines. We have 3 rolling deadlines based off of the employer size. So the first deadline for businesses with more than 100 employees was on September 30th of 2020. The following one was for businesses with more than 50 employees on June 30th, 2021. Our final deadline, which is our largest tranche of employers as well, is going to be for those that employ an average of 5 or more employees, and that is rolling around this June 30th of 2022. Businesses averaging less than 5 employees, they are not part of the mandate. So unfortunately, they're not able to register for CalSavers, but we did open up the program for individual registration for those that want to participate but are working for an employer who is not eligible to register. Next slide, please. So next are going to be some of the key features that we had in mind when we were designing the program. Back in 2016, when the legislation first passed, we gathered together a group of stakeholders that represented both the employer community as well as the interest of the consumer. What we wanted to know about the employer community in particular was what it was about the plans on the existing market that make it difficult for them to offer retirement savings to their employees. There were 3 particular hurdles reported. It was the administrative burden, the cost, and also the fiduciary liability. So we addressed all 3 of those issues with CalSavers. We designed the program to be as easy as possible to facilitate. There are no fees for employers to register. The program is an IRA, so there's also no employer contributions or matches allowed. And the employer has no fiduciary liability. The board that I work for and all of the contractors are the fiduciaries of the program. When designing this program for the participants, we wanted to make sure that we kept it really simple. So there is a short list of investment options for them to select from. The program is portable and accessible. The accounts belong to the individual, not the business, so they take them with them when they change jobs. And it's also low fee for them to participate. And participants currently pay between 83 to 95 cents for every $100 invested annually. And we do have our fee scheduled to decrease as the program assets grow. Next slide, please. So here are going to be some of our very many resources. On our website, we have a lot of information for both the participants and the employers as well. We have downloadable information in the top 10 most spoken languages in California. You're also able to visit our events page on our site, where we host daily webinars now, both for employers and for employees. And we put those on in both English, Spanish, Cantonese, and Mandarin as well. Our customer support line is multilingual, and we have a line dedicated to both the participants and the employers. And we have a wonderful field team also that is located throughout California, who is available for one-on-one support. Next slide, please. And lastly, I'll leave you my contact information here for anyone who would like to continue this conversation or has any questions on the program. Thank you very much for your time and for the opportunity to present to you today.
Thank you, Carolina. That was great. Now I'm so excited to toss it over to DFPI's Christina Tetreault, who will introduce herself and her wonderful speakers for the cyber fraud panel discussion. Take it away, Christina.
Thank you. So such a wonderful event and really enjoying it. And now we've got a wonderful panel. I'm going to introduce each of them, and then we are going to ask them, I will ask them some questions. And we're going to focus today on cyber fraud. And more specifically, we're going to talk about kind of digital financial fraud. So our panelists today are Nelson Santiago. He is Consumer Actions Community Outreach Manager. We have Michael San, who is liaison with National Cyber Forensics and Training Alliance with the FBI, and Kathy Stokes, who is the AARP Director of Fraud Prevention Program. And I want to say a big welcome and a huge thank you to our panelists for being here. I'm going to jump right in with the first question. This is for all the panelists, but I'll call on you in turn. So Michael, if you could be the first to answer this question, what types of scams are you seeing? What types of digital financial scams are you seeing out there?
Sure. So good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Mike Sun. I'm a FBI cyber supervisor here in Los Angeles. So representing the cyber division headquarters here. Thanks for having me here. A couple of things that the FBI is seeing across the board. There's a couple of crimes that we have seen throughout the last 4 or 5 years, and they haven't changed from a digital cyber fraud type crime. It's business email compromise. What that is, they're impersonating a business CFO, CEO, and wiring money, or breaking into real estate. The bad actors are breaking into real estate agents and stealing your money before you close on a home, right? So just to kind of give you some perspective on the IC3, which is the Internet Crime Complaint Center, IC3.gov. It's the FBI's, point for collecting cybercrime complaints. In 2021, this was hot off the press, probably released in the last 2 weeks. We had 847,000 victims and 6.9 billion losses to the that was reported in the United States. California was the only state that surpassed the $1 billion mark losses, right? So that's in 67,000 victims. And I'll tell you that those are very heartbreaking, as a lot of those victims are, they don't know, there's no really place for them to go. And I'll kind of discuss it later on, but that's just types of crime that we're seeing that people are reporting. And we do have mechanism in place to kind of help recover some of those, but I'll kind of go into the details later on. But just want to give you some scope of what we're dealing with from the FBI side.
This is a huge issue for Californians. Thank you for that, Michael. Nelson, can you tell us what you're seeing, what Consumer Action is seeing?
Sure. You hear me okay? Well, great. Thank you, Christina, first of all, for the invitation. And I'm honored to be on this panel with Kathy and Michael. A little bit about Consumer Action. Just first, we do have run a Consumer Action hotline, a consumer hotline since our inception 50 years ago. So we hear from consumers every day, hundreds of complaints every month. And also we do put out a Scamgram newsletter where we report things that we hear on the hotline, as well as things we come across from other sources. Now, in terms of the kinds of complaints that we've been hearing, many of them start with an unexpected communication, right? It could be the call, but of course, digital, a text message, email, a social media message. And always they're digging for information or account numbers or, of course, money, either right up front or eventually they get to that point. And each of these communications comes with a promise that the consumer is going to get something desirable, like maybe they'll help them pay down debt, or maybe they can help them get that coveted item, a concert ticket, for example, or perhaps a rare puppy, or huge profits on an investment. That's another big one. And in terms of the ones that we've been hearing lately, just even in the past few days, the past few months, we got a call from a consumer, for example, who was promised a discount on his TV service. He could get 40% off his TV service if he paid $300 on the spot, right? So that's the promise, that enticing promise, but it's not always a promise. Sometimes it can be a threat that the consumer will suffer harm, or that they will, they will experience some kind of loss. So the classic one there would be the utility company, the fake utility company who's going to shut your service off in the middle of winter, in the middle of summer, or the IRS impersonator who wants you to pay right away, or you're going to get arrested, or you're deported. Those kinds of things are common. In terms of some of the other specific complaints we got a complaint just in the last 7 days from somebody who was woken up in the middle of the night by someone that sounded like her son, who had been drinking, was driving, got in an accident, and needed money right away to get out of this trouble. So you've heard of those, but they still happen. We just got that call a few days ago. Another consumer, the other one I want to mention is when accounts get hacked, like social media accounts get hacked. We had somebody contact us. They got a message from somebody they thought was their friend, who said, use this service to get help paying down your bills. So she says, let me find out about this. They promised to get her $200,000 toward her bills if she could use gift cards to send them gift cards right away, right? $300, and she lost the $300. Just another example of a call that we got, or an email, actually, we get complaints by email as well. Another consumer was promised a home buyer assistance program. She got a message from her friend. She thought that it was actually a message that a hacker sent her. She thought it was a friend. You're going to get $15,000 toward buying a home. You just have to pay $1,500 for the application. And she thought the message was coming from a fellow military spouse. She never got the money. And then when she contacted her friend, she reached out to her friend, she realized that the friend's account had been hacked. So those are the kinds of things that we're seeing. And we'll talk about what to do about that a little bit later.
Just heartbreaking, Nelson. Thank you for that. Kathy, can you tell us about scams that you're seeing?
Yeah, I'd really like to do that. We have, so I'm with the AARP, and we run a program called the Fraud Watch Network. And a part of that is a helpline. So you can call, you don't have to be a member of AARP to call, but you can call if you're reporting a scam that you've seen but not actually engaged in, or you can call if you're not sure if something is or isn't legitimate. And then if you're a victim, if you're a family member of a victim, you can call this number and you get empathetic support from trained fraud fighter volunteers, because we know that the impact on fraud victims is certainly financial, but it's almost always deeply emotional as well. And one of the worst types of scams where the emotional impact is so profound is online romance fraud. And unfortunately, we're seeing a twist in it. So in a typical online romance scam, you find yourself meeting somebody, whether you're not on a dating app or a dating website, you might be playing words with friends. You might be just perusing your social media feed, and somebody, seeks to connect with you, and you connect with them, and then the person starts, charming you as much as possible. They've probably done the research and have read your profiles here and there to know what you like, and they become very invested in the relationship very quickly. They may say they're abroad because they're working on a business opportunity, or they're in the military and they're deployed, or they're on a humanitarian mission somewhere. Eventually, they ask you to get off of the platform where you met and move on to another platform. And then they really take it up a notch. And all of a sudden, you are swept off your feet. They totally love bomb you, and you think that this is the relationship that will last your life. It is so real to the victims. And eventually, though, and this could be weeks, months, longer than that, this criminal is going to start asking for you to send money. It may be a small amount at first. It may be, I need some money to boost my cell signal. And typically that's like, buy a gift card and share the numbers off the back. What we're seeing now is that these criminals are saying, hey, by the way, I'm really good at investing in cryptocurrency. Why don't you come in on it with me? And we've seen it where the criminal will send that person to a legitimate cryptocurrency exchange, and the person will put money on it and we'll see it grow, and eventually we'll tell them to go to another exchange, which is completely fake. And it looks like they're growing money up like $1 million, right? And then they go to take it out and they can't because it's not there. And
Kathy, I think your sound cut out. I don't know if it was just me, but I think it cut out right when you said there's no money there. I'm sorry about that.
oh yeah, and really that's it. You realize once you try to access the funds from the second platform that you've been sent to, that you can't access the funds because they're not there to begin with.
Gosh, just heartbreaking. Well, I have a question for all three panelists, but actually I'm going to start with you, Kathy, is what should victims do in this instance? You've mentioned the helpline. Are there other things that that people who've been victimized by scams like these should do?
Absolutely. If you've experienced a financial loss to fraud, any type of scam, call the police. Sometimes you'll call the police and they'll say, well, you gave them your money willingly. This isn't a crime. Well, that's not true. It is a crime. So push. Or they'll say it's a civil matter. Well, that's not true either. These are crimes and you should report them to the police. Maybe they refer you to the FBI, get a report. And the very slim chance there's ever an opportunity for restitution, you want to have the report. But it also helps, Michael was talking before about IC3, it's data collection. The more information that law enforcement knows about these frauds, they can start to piece things together and maybe actually go after the bad guys and get them.
Thank you, Kathy. Nelson, I'm going to put the same question to you. You have your helpline, people are calling in. What should victims of the types of scams that you've described do?
Yeah, well, we actually recommend that people complain to a lot of different places. And of course, law enforcement, as Kathy mentioned, that, depending on if your bank accounts were compromised, you want to contact any financial institution that was involved in the transaction. So of course, let your bank know. If you have paid with a credit card, not every scammer takes credit cards, but if you use a credit card, which is always the safest way to pay, you have the most protections there. You have protection if the scammer somehow steals your information and uses the card, as well as if you hand over the credit card information because you think they're going to get you something, you have that chargeback right. You can say, I never got what was represented. And so there's protection there. That's the strongest protection. You also want to contact the gift card. In one of the examples that I mentioned, it was gift cards that were used to pay. The one that I mentioned where the military spouse was making payments or made payments to try to get some money or a grant for buying a home, she used peer-to-peer payment apps. So you want to tell the gift card issue, you want to tell the peer-to-peer payment app. With those, the money you pay is very much like cash. So it's very hard to recover. And that's why scammers ask for you to pay that way. But gift card companies, do have fraud prevention measures in place, and they can identify that, when cards are being purchased in California and balances are being checked overseas immediately, or maybe being spent in another state immediately. And in some cases can actually block the funds if the money hasn't been spent. There was a headline last week, the headline last week was that Walmart stopped for almost $4.5 million were blocked. And that money is now with the Department of Justice. And if consumers hopefully saved documentation about their purchases of those gift cards, et cetera, then perhaps they can get some recovery later. So we say complain everywhere. Certainly at the top of our list, law enforcement, the Federal Trade Commission. I'm sure you'll have this resource out, but it's reportfraud.ftc.gov. That the FTC shares those complaints with law enforcement, and it, again, collects the data and maybe can take enforcement actions. The FBI, I'll let them talk about why you should complain to the FBI and when. Attorney General's office, your office, Christina, in the areas that you have jurisdiction over, as well as getting guidance from organizations like us that hear from consumers every day, like the AARP, and pointing people in the right direction. So those are some of the key places to complain. And I say save as much documentation as you have. in case you later have to make a point about you being a victim.
Thanks, Nelson. Those are some great best practices. Michael, the question is for you. If someone's been victimized or a loved one's been victimized, what should they do? Oh, you're on mute.
So back in 2018, the FBI created what we call a Recovery Asset Team, RAT, right? That's the FBI's word. It's part of the IC3 site that we talked about earlier. I'll tell you, before the 2018, our squad in LA was recovering a lot of funds back to the victims. I think in 1 year, we recovered over $100 million for victims in 1 year just from my squad. And we realized we couldn't do this from LA only. So we expanded it now as a headquarters initiative. The first thing you do, go to IC3, file a report. We have the RAT team is there to help recover funds back for the victims. They don't go into DOJ. They don't go to slush fund. They actually, if they're able to recover the funds, they could recover that funds directly back to the victims, right? But speed is of essence. Kathy talked earlier about like how using romance scam. These criminals are using romance scam to funnel money through them as well. So that's why it's sometimes it's hard to kind of go chase after the bad guys, because sometimes the money laundering network are sometimes victims themselves for romance scams. So that's why it's, like Kathy said, it's such a heartbreaking issue that we address all the time. Just from the RAT success rate, that if you could report, we always give it like 48 hours. It's a 74% success rate. Last year we had 1,700 incidents. Out of the $443 million losses that was reported to the FBI through IC3, we recovered $328 million. So 74% success rate back to the victim's bank. But again, speed is the most critical thing that you could do. We do have professionals that are really just dedicated to making sure that we make the victims whole. But that is one of the sites that, from the FBI side, I think it's tremendous asset to the public for you guys.
Wow. So the rats are really achieving success. Thank you for that, Michael. Super helpful. So we're up to our last question. And again, we're going to ask this to each of the panelists. Is an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So how can people protect themselves? I'm going to start with Nelson. What recommendations do you have for how people can protect themselves from being targets or victims of scams and fraud? You two are on, yeah, there we go.
One of the things that we say we have a scams module called Just Say No to Scams. And I'll put a link to a resource sheet that I put together just a few months ago, very creatively titled Resources for Learning About Scams. And you can search for it on our website, www.consumer-action.org. And it has links to just about everything that I mentioned to learn more about it. But we recognize in our module that not everyone's going to keep up with every single twist on a new scam. And so we think it's really important to be able to learn how to identify the red flags, to know the signs of fraud. And I mentioned them at the beginning, the unexpected communication, the demand for information or money, the promise, the threat, right? And also, there's always an urgency. That's another flag. Just, you don't have time to think about it. You don't have time to ask a friend. You don't have time to research. All of us are great researchers now. We're on Google all the time, right? Or DuckDuckGo, whatever your preferred search engine is. And what we want people to do, we always recommend, it's a product or a company you're not too familiar with, put that into the search engine along with the word scam. And I like to add the word consumer as well, because then you'll find whether there are scams and whether maybe a consumer agency is already working on this or has written about it. So we want people to take that kind of time. So that's the other red flag, the urgency. And then this request to pay in these forms that are very hard to stop or reverse. About these peer-to-peer payment apps, I mentioned how credit cards have the most protection. With the peer-to-peer payment apps, they're not required. If you initiate the payment, even if you were tricked into making that payment, they don't have to reverse it because it is a consumer-initiated payment, even though there was fraud involved. Which is, I forgot to mention that you want to complain to the CFPB and the federal agencies, because maybe we'll get stronger protections, so that if people are induced and they initiate the payment, maybe that they'll have some recovery there or some relief there. So knowing the signs of fraud, and then I want to mention our Scamgram newsletter. It's going to be in the link that I mentioned earlier. I love the Better Business Bureau's scam tracker. If people are not familiar with it, at the end of this call, you can visit the Better Business Bureau scam tracker and find out how much money was lost just during this meeting, this hour. People are reporting in real time what scams they're seeing and how much they're losing. So it's a good way to keep up on some of the scams that are happening. And that's it. I'll put a link to that resource sheet where you can find more ways to protect yourself.
Thank you so much, Nelson. Appreciate that. Kathy, the question comes to you. What are your best recommendations for how to avoid being victimized by a scam?
It's really about just sort of staying in the know. If you can sign up for Nelson's newsletter, that can be your prompt. You know, when you're reading something from Nelson's newsletter and you're like, oh yeah. And if you kind of keep it in your head, you're more likely to spot the red flags. We have watchdog alerts that come out every other week by email or by text. You can go to aarp.org/fraudwatchnetwork and look those up. It's the same thing, you know, try to keep it in your head. If you learn something new today about a particular scam, pay it forward. Tell your friends, your family, everybody in your network, because research shows if you know about a specific scam, you're 80% less likely to engage with it. And if you do engage, you're 40% less likely to lose money or sensitive information. So spread the word, pay it forward. If you can spot a scam, you can stop a scam.
Education is power. Well, thank you so much for that, Kathy. Michael, can you bring us home? What are the best recommendations you have for how to avoid being victimized by scams?
Sure. I think Nelson and Kathy brought up some good points. So I'll just add a couple things. If you get, on email, you get some kind of, asking to change payment information, please pick up the phone and call. I think a lot of people forget they'll correspond on email and say, what did you mean to change this? And the bad guy saying yes. And people just kind of go through that, like we've lost that art of communication. So please, if you seem suspicious, like Kathy said, if it seems suspicious, pick up the phone and call, because you want to know the other side of the consumer, whether you're the contract or you're the vendor, right? Whichever way, just make sure that those are done. The one thing that, just very simple and is free for almost every services out there is two-factor authentication. I know that was mentioned as multi-factor, MFA or 2FAs, depending on who you call and how you research it. But if you Google it, it shows up on how to do it for almost every email service, almost every social media, anything you have 2FA has been, you could just enable it for free, right? So just please ensure that this is not a silver bullet for cybersecurity or for fraud, but it is a great tool. Like most criminals that we're dealing with a lot of times is if they see that, they kind of go away, right? So just kind of enable that. It is again, a free service for almost every email service, social media, banking, anything you have to log into, they almost always offer 2FA. So please make sure that's enabled.
Well, that was super helpful. So we've learned about what kinds of scams are out there. We've learned about what to do if you fall victim to a scam. And then we've learned that knowledge of scams is very powerful, and that our other defenses are to stay watchful, set up multi-factor authentication, and really just try and keep ahead of the criminals. So this was really fabulous. I want to say a huge thank you to our panelists. They're just wonderful and so knowledgeable. And I will hand the microphone back to you, Katie. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was great. Thanks, Christina, to you and to all of our panelists and to all of you for watching today's event. And remember, there's more information at the virtual resource fair on its own website, and we'll add that to the chat once again. Also, please consider subscribing to our newsletter to stay informed of new events and initiatives, and we'll add that to the chat as well. If you have any questions about anything in today's webinar, please do not hesitate to email us at outreach@dfpi.ca.gov, and we'll make sure that your questions get to the right place. Again, thank you one last time for attending, and we hope that you stay safe physically and financially. Thank you.